Is this Mets pitching rotation going to be an asset or a liability come opening day now that they're down two starters? Let's bring in our guy Tyler Ward to get his thoughts on the latest news coming out of Mets spring training camp. Wardy, what's going on, my man? What are we about?
How's it going, Brandon?
30 something days away from opening day?
Yeah, man, it's going to be here before we know it. And it feels like just yesterday we were talking about, the latest offseason moves for the
Yep.
Mets. It's crazy how fast things pick up, but really looking forward to chopping it up and getting into this one.
All right, let's talk about obviously the biggest news is breaking out of spring training. Montas and Manaea are out for an extended period of time. Johan Santana says don't panic. And Carlos Mendoza said that we feel good with our depth. How do you feel about one, the state of the rotation, and two, the depth?
Yeah, I feel like the answers we've heard from David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza, et cetera, is what you'd expect. The Mets are never going to act in desperation right away, or at least come off that way publicly after losing not one, but two key starters now to begin the regular season at minimum. Montas won't be back until probably sometime in June, whereas Manaea, it could be a couple weeks he's not throwing, north of a month he's not throwing, and then ramping up from there. And when you look at the depth of this team with guys like Paul Blackburn, Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning, they're all solid depth pieces on the back end. But now that the Mets are without two key pieces of this rotation for a decent period of time, there are question marks. And the biggest thing that they're missing at the moment is that true innings eater. So while I like the depth the Mets have, I don't love the current construction of the rotation. And in a very Metsian fashion, this is what has been their MO each and every year that I've covered them, where a key starter or two goes down in spring training to begin the year right before the season even begins.
Yeah, it's going to put a lot of pressure on that offense while the rotation kind of gets healthy and gets their stuff
Right.
together. But at the end of the day, you paying Juan Soto a lot of money to overcome some of the mishaps or struggles of that pitching rotation. Let's talk about a little bit of good news that's coming out of training camp. The Post had reported that A.J. Minter, who is making his way back from hip surgery that he had last summer, AJ said that he's slightly ahead of schedule in his rehab. He hasn't pitched against live batters just yet, but what do you think of the Minter news?
I think that's great. Back at Amazing Day, Brandon, when we were there in attendance, AJ was speaking to the media and having a great time now in a Mets uniform after being a longtime Atlanta Brave. And he is without question one of the best high leverage lefties in all Major League Baseball, not just the National League. And to find out that he's slightly ahead of schedule is great news because the initial thought process from Carlos Mendoza, among others, is that they were going to be taking it very easy with him. The expectations that they hope he could be ready for opening day, but they're not going to push him because they need him for the full 162. So to hear that he's feeling good ahead of schedule is great. Everything is in line for him to hopefully begin this year with the Mets on time.
But with Montas and Manaea out, you think they push him to be ready by opening day or soon after?
I think in the case of Minter, not so much because his impact in comparison to the rotation is a bit different. I think what'll be interesting is really how do the Mets go about more so of their swingman types and their bullpen. Not so much the AJ Minters, but more so on these guys like Justin Hageman, for example, that they acquired this past offseason. Max Kranick, who's a diehard Mets fan who's been here the past year. Those are the guys that we have more question marks with, where they may have to eat more of those innings. Whereas a guy like AJ, his sole role is going to be really to come in high leverage situations to help set up a guy like Edwin Diaz.
Some more good news coming out of spring training. Brett Baty ripped his first home run, and Luisangel Acuña had himself a big day on Tuesday. Who outside of the obvious big dogs on this team has kind of impressed you throughout the beginning of spring training?
I think you just took the words out of my mouth, right? Brett Baty, this is a third straight spring training where he's pulling and lifting a baseball beautifully, and we're all left wondering, is this a year he finally breaks out as a true mainstay on this Mets roster, the way that Vientos did a year ago? Luisangel Acuña, who broke out with the Mets towards the end of last year thanks to Lindor going down with injury, made the most of that opportunity and has been an absolute lightning rod in this Mets lineup when playing, as we saw yesterday, going all the way from first to third there after stealing the bag just because of his speed that he has and all the other elements of his game. But outside of those guys in particular, Jose Siri has really impressed me. Jose Siri, the Mets acquired center fielder from the Rays this past offseason, and he is as extroverted as possible. He's got the earrings going on. He's got the chain. He is pimping every home run, even when he's batting right around 200. He had a home run against his former team in Ronel Blanco and the Astros a day ago. That was impressive to see. He has been a really fun watch thus far, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of the newcomers as well as the youngsters, including guys like Jet Williams and Drew Gilbert, Mets top prospects who will continue to get playing time throughout spring.
lot of flash and entertainment and money in that outfield.
Oh, for sure.
Between he and Juan Soto. All right, final word or final ward, Wardy.
Oh, I love that. Final word with Wardy.
We gotta make that. We gotta make that into a thing, my man.
There we go. I love that, Brandon. Final word from me, or final word rather. I'm very happy with so far with spring training. I mean, obviously, it's not ideal to see your starters go down, but sadly, as a Mets fan, I expect to see spring training, so none of this is surprising. It's more so how do they combat this and whether they seek external help, like a Jose Quintana, for example, or someone via trade, or stay internal. This is another year in Mets land where while we might not be happy with how the rotation looks right now, I do have the utmost confidence in David Stearns and their pitching lab to keep things afloat the same way that they did last year. And honestly, I like how the Mets show out rotation wise this year versus a year ago.
Man, just what a year, what a difference a year makes. The confidence in David Stearns right now as opposed to this same time last season.
Right.
Tyler Ward, Wardy, thanks for hanging with us, man.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Looking forward to the next one.